are things in this country that I find deeply disturbing. Arnold Toynbee said that societies don't commit, they're never murdered. Civilizations are not murdered. The great English historian, he said civilizations commit suicide. And as far as I can tell, and I actually did a rotation in a psychiatric unit and had some suicidal patients. As far as I can tell, I see very serious suicidal tendencies in this society. There are things that are deeply troubling about this society. The mechanization of warfare, the idea that you can send robots to eliminate people on other parts of the planet, that you can have civilians or people living normal lives in suburbia in New York, and they go to work and their work is to drop bombs on people on the other side of the planet. And when they talk about their successful strikes, they say 3 suspected terrorists were killed in a drone strike today. 3 suspected terrorists. And we know for a fact that innocent people have died in these strikes, many children. By their own estimates, over 200 children in northern Pakistan have died from these drone strikes, terrorizing people living in these places. This troubles me about this country. It troubles me because I live here. I pay my taxes. But it troubles me, and it troubles me deeply. And I really feel that we as Muslims need to be courageous. It's difficult to be courageous. We're living in a society that doesn't encourage people to speak up, even whistleblowers. If you look at some of the problems that these whistleblowers who have spoken about wrongdoings in corporations or in the government, what happens to them and how they suffer from speaking based on their moral consciousness. If we look at recently what happened in this situation with all of these leaks and how this person was treated, and all of these people that have had the moral courage, those people that released the pictures from Abu Ghraib. Do you remember Abu Ghraib? Iraq now is suffering more than it's ever suffered. It's worse than during even the war period. It's a country in complete dissolution. Palestine. These are real problems, human problems that our country should not participate in creating more problems, but with the gifts that we've been given as a country, the power that we've been given at this country, we should be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Really. And we as a community have to be a moral conscience. We have to speak the truth. As a community, we also have to look at the type of culture that we are spreading around the globe. We are the #1 producer of pornography in the world. This is deeply troubling to me as somebody who's trying to raise young boys. Adolescents are always mystified by sexuality. They're mystified by it. But what we're dealing with now on the internet is so deeply troubling. We recently had a courageous owner of hotels in Sweden who began to work on the problem of human trafficking, and when he realized the connection between pornography and human trafficking, he removed pornography from his hotels. This is something that should be honored. It should be news. The country of Iceland that prohibits pornography, the sale of pornography in Iceland, not because they're religious people, it's one of the most secular countries in the world, but because they're a middle-class people, and they know that pornography is harmful for the common weal. But what's worse is that pornography is no longer X-rated. We have in the Video Music Awards a young girl who had millions and millions of followers as Hannah Montana. Millions of young American girls that saw her as something to be emulated, to be looked up at. And in a display of utter degradation, human degradation, to a male or a female. And I don't blame Miley Cyrus. I see her as a victim of a demonic, dehumanizing entertainment culture. In fact, I would call it an occulture, not a culture, because of the occultic undertones in it. It's a dark culture, and this is what our mainstream entertainment is producing. So all of those children that saw her in the Mickey Mouse Club as a young and innocent girl are now twerking, a word that shouldn't even be in our vocabulary. This troubles me about this country. And I think Muslims, as one of the last bastions of really serious commitment to modesty, to honoring our women, may Allah reward all of you, all of these women, incredible courage in the midst of a naked society, a society that removes clothes, that these women go out every day in their jobs, working amidst people who see it as some kind of backward, retrograde approach to women. And yet we have social science that has shown that when men see a naked woman or a woman in a bathing suit, the same area of the brain that lights up when they see a tool lights up. It's not the frontal lobe. It's a complete objectification that occurs. This is what happens to our women when they become objects of lust, as opposed to human beings with minds, with spirits, with something to say, not to be used and abused and then thrown away. And look how many women we have out here that are raising their children in single homes because they had children out of wedlock. There was no commitment by the male to a family. And they suffer and they struggle. Some of them are on welfare. They're fortunate to live in a country where they can get some help. This is a crisis in our country. We also have a culture that will not talk about sexually transmitted diseases in any honest way. Every single thing that is harmful for you in America, they'll warn you about. They'll warn you about donuts. They'll have commercials about fatty foods. Everybody knows potato chips are not good for them. Everybody knows that French fries aren't good for them. They know that cheesecake's not good for them. But nobody will dare speak out against the deviant sexual practices that occur in this country and are not only not talked about, are promoted by mainstream entertainment and society. Promoted. Deviant sexual practices that are harmful to the human being. Pathogenic sexual practices that cause serious diseases. This isn't like a fatty food that takes time, many years before it accumulates and causes a heart attack. This is a one-time possible death sentence. And yet people won't speak honestly about it. The World Health Organization tells us that rectal intercourse is the most risky form of sexual behavior. That's what the World Health Organization has to say, and yet people will not say this is not a healthy choice. I don't want my child to be practicing this, male or female. This has nothing to do with sexual preference. This has to do with a sexual practice that is done amongst heterosexual people and amongst homosexual people. Yet it's harmful, and nobody wants to speak about it. We need our physicians to speak up about the types of cancers that occur, about what happens when you get genital warts. I worked for a gastroenterologist and saw firsthand what happens to people. Nobody wants to talk about this. And yet we have a society now where they say just get a vaccination for HPV as if this is some normal event that's going to happen in your life. You're just going to get HPV. No, there are many strains of HPV, but sexually transmitted HPV is a very specific type that is transmitted through sexual practices when people are having multiple partners or practicing types of sexual behavior that are unacceptable. This is the reality of our culture. We need to have honesty amongst our physicians. People need to speak out. They can't be afraid of a culture that is promoting pathogenic forms of behavior. Recently, at the Gay Pride Parade in New York, they requested that they all get meningitis shots because there's a new strain of meningitis in the homosexual community that is extremely deadly and has only shown up in that community. It is not fair to people with same-sex urges not to tell them about the dangers of this lifestyle. It's not fair. For young people, all people can make their decisions, but a 15-year-old kid in high school, he deserves to know the nature of these practices. Trouble me about this culture, and Muslims should be a spark of hope. We should be a beacon of light, not just for people overseas, but for people in this country. When they see the dignity of our dress, when they see the dignity of our behavior, when they see the excellence of our schools, when they see the professionalism of our doctors, of our healers, of our lawyers, when they see people that are ethical at the root and the core, and they won't inform, they won't absolve themselves of those ethical responsibilities, then we'll be a beacon of light. And people will say, I want to be like those people. Hope. I'm in it till the last breath. I'm in it till the last breath. Because in that last breath, and I pray to God that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me on my last breath, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, because I believe in the promise of God. I believe that His prophet was true. I believe that hell is true and that the fire is true and that the day of judgment is true. And I testify to the truth of the sirat, that we will be weighed in the balance, and there will be those who are found wanting, and there will be those who are given grace, and there will be the outstrippers. These are all true things that every prophet has taught, and I believe in them. And I will hold to them till I die, and the struggle continues. This world was never meant to be paradise. God has created a world that is meant to drive you to God. And if you're being driven to the devil, you've been duped, my friends. Because all of the hardships that you suffer in your life, if you believe in God, you will find those rewards on the day of judgment. I was in Abu Dhabi, and a taxi driver said to me, and I'm done. I was in Abu Dhabi. A taxi driver said to me, I said, where are you from? He said, Dar'a. And I said to him, I hope that your family's safe. He said the house caved in on them. My father was killed. He said to me, I've worked 12 years. Every month I sent everything I could back to my father to build that house. And it was destroyed. I feel like my whole life is a waste. I said to him, Ya akhi, bil Arabiya, ihtasib 'inda Allah. Wallahi kunta fi birrin biwalidayk. You were in filial piety to your parents. Believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What you're doing is not to build in this world. من بان لهذه الدنيا فقد خاب ما بنى. If you build for this world, what you build will go to naught. We build for the next world, not for this world. And if what we build, if my college in California is destroyed by an earthquake, so be it. So be it. But we are builders for the akhirah, and this is the place we do it. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum.